guys, it's Trina and I am doing the end of year book survey that was created by Jamie over at the Perpetual Page Turner. Jamie is one of the first inspirations I had to want to get involved in the book community, so I highly encourage you to check out her blog, and this survey is open to everyone. If you're a blogger or a booktuber, I'll put a link down below in case you want to do it too. What was the number of books you read this year? In total, I read 101 books. Number of rereads. I only can think of half of a reread I did, which was for the last half of Mockingjay. Yeah, I'm just not a big rereader. What genre did you read the most from? And Goodreads every year tells me that I shelve more books as contemporary, but I don't believe that. I think that I read more fantasy. What was the best book you read in 2015? The Martian by Andy Weir. It just gave me so many feels, and I will go into more in-depth reasons why it was my favorite in my best books of the year video. Number 2 is a book you were excited about and you thought you were gonna love it more than you actually ended up loving it. So for me, this is definitely I Was Here by Gail Forman. I just ended up being so disappointed in the representation of depression in this book. It was just, it did no service to depression. I have a Goodreads review that kind of explains my feelings a lot better because I read that book back in February. Number 3 is most surprising book, either in a good way or a bad way. I'm gonna go with Daughter of Deep Silence by Carrie Ryan for this one. I had no idea what to expect and it totally blew me away, and I just soaked it in and I was like, this is different than things I've been reading, and I just really loved it. It did really surprise me with how good I thought it was and how much I enjoyed that book. Question 4 is the book you pushed the most people to read this year, and they actually did, and that is Not a Drop to Drink by Mindy McGinnis. I am so thrilled that people were actually picking this book up because they've heard me gush about it so much. Question 5 is a 3-parter. What was the best series I started in 2015, the best sequel I read, and the best series ender I read this year? So my best series I started was Game of Thrones. I was really surprised by how much I loved it. My favorite sequel was Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. Book number 4 in the Throne of Glass series. It just continues to be a Trina series. And for the best series ender, I kind of have a toss-up between Winter by Marissa Meyer because I thought that this was a fantastic ending to this series, but I was also really impressed by 7 Minutes in Heaven by Sarah Shepard, which was the final book in the Lion Game series. It was a mystery series and you could see how all of her clues worked back around and paid off, and I thought that she had just the perfect amount of wrap-up. I just really loved that book as a series ender, but Winter, I think I just like the Lunar Chronicles as a series more, but both very fantastic endings to their series. Question 6 is favorite new author you discovered in 2015, and that is Victoria Schwab. Question 7 is best book from a genre you don't typically read, or best book that was just out of your comfort zone, and this year I finally read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Question 8 is what was the most action-packed, thrilling, or most unput-downable book you read this year? I could not put down The Martian by Andy Weir. I read this in only a couple of sittings, like huge chunks of this book at a time, because I needed to know what was going to happen. This is just a survival story, which is my perfect type of story, so I couldn't put this one down. Question 9, a book that you read this year that you're most likely to reread next year. Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. The sequel is coming out next year, and I heard so many great things about the audiobook for Illuminae, and I listened to a sample, and it's like got a bunch of different voice actors, and the way that they play out this story, because it's told in such an interesting format, it was really cool sounding. So I think that next year, before the sequel comes out, I will reread Illuminae, but in the audiobook format. Question 10, favorite book cover for a book I read this year. That's either going to be 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray or This Shattered World by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. I just think the colors are beautiful on these books. Question 11, most memorable character of 2015. Mark Watney. Question 12, most beautifully written book I read this year. I'm going to go with the book You by Carolyn Kepnes. It's not that the writing is like flowery or anything like that, but the way in which this book is written I felt was different and so well done. Question 13 is the most thought-provoking or life-changing book I read this year. For me, it was Motherless Daughters by Hope Edelman. This is a non-fiction self-help grief book which really has helped me understand a lot about myself. It was a very life-changing book for me, though I know that being a very specific niche, it's not going to apply to everybody. Question 14, a book you can't believe you waited until this year to read. Game of Thrones. Question 15 is favorite quote that you read in a book this year. If a hiker gets lost in the mountains, people will coordinate a search. If a train crashes, people will line up to give blood. If an earthquake levels a city, people all over the world will send emergency supplies. This is so fundamentally human that it's found in every culture without exception. Yes, there are a-holes who just don't care. They're massively outnumbered by the people who do. Quotes like that just put into perspective the kindness that there is in the world and the beauty of this human experience. Question 16 is what was the shortest and longest book you read this year? The shortest book I read this year was kind of a novella or an extra epilogue to the Infernal Devices and Mortal Instrument series by Cassandra Clare. It was called The Bridge. It was 32 pages according to GOODREADS. And the longest book I read this year was A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin, which was 1,177 pages long. Question 17 is what book shocked you the most? I read a lot of books that had twists and turns this year, and I feel like nothing truly caught me off guard, but there was one, even though I predicted it, it was really fun to watch it play out, and that was from the book Vanishing Girls by Lauren Oliver. Question 18, OTP of the year. Crescent Thorn from the Lunar Chronicles series. I cannot get enough of those two. Question 19 is favorite non-romantic relationship of the year. Grace and Dr. Thornhollow from A Madness So Discreet, who are set up perfectly to have some kind of a romance between them, but they don't. And it was just a very refreshing kind of working relationship to see, especially in a YA book, and I loved it for that. Favorite book I read this year that was by an author who I have previously read. Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas. Best book I read this year that I read based solely on a recommendation from somebody else. The American Vampire comic series, which was recommended by Mariana in one of her videos. She did recommendations for some graphic novels and comics, and that's the only reason I picked it up, because I had literally never heard of it before. Next is new favorite fictional crush from a book I read this year, and I don't really feel like I do book crushes. I'm more into like ships and shipping characters together, but the only one that actually came to my mind was Theron from Snow Like Ashes by Sarah Rosh. I read this with Leia over at Hi I Love Books, and we just kept talking about Theron and saying, man, I really hope that he turns out to be like a love interest and like a bad guy, so let's go with Theron. Best 2015 debut I read An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Best world building or most vivid setting I read this year. I thought long and hard about this, and I wanted to go with a new world that I wasn't already familiar with, and I settled on A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Now, I can't tell you why this world is how it is, but it does stand out to me as one that was a vividly imagined world. A book that put a smile on your face. It was just fun to read. The Air by Kira Cass. These books are just fun. 26, a book that made you cry. I don't cry very often while reading, but The Martian had me sobbing. 27, hidden gem of the year. I think that Daughter of Deep Silence by Carrie Ryan isn't getting a lot of attention, and it really stood out to me. I think it is kind of hidden, and it deserves a little bit more hype. A book that crushed your soul. I'm going with Slammed by Colleen Hoover. In the negative sense of crushed my soul, I did not enjoy the relationship in this book at all, and it was a soul-crushing relationship in my opinion. 29, most unique book I read this year. Magonia by Maria Devane Headley. It was like a blizzard of special snowflakes. Question 30, a book that made you the most mad. Either Slammed or Magonia. See above. Who was my favorite blog I discovered in 2015? I didn't discover any blogs, but I did discover a lot of booktube channels because this is the community that I am active on. Favorite is a difficult word for me because I don't like to play favorites. I don't want to call one person out and make everyone else feel like they are not favorites. But I do think my booktube experience would not be what it is without Kayla Rain. She has been probably my biggest champion from like day one of starting my channel. She has always had something positive to say to me no matter what has happened. She's just such an encouraging friend to me, and I've gotten to meet her a couple of times. Everybody should have a friend like Kayla. Next, favorite review that I did in 2015. I'm pretty proud of my Pretty Little Liars series review. Next is what was my best discussion or non-review. My new to booktube tag. I actually made it at the end of last year, right when I started. I started the end of last year, I'm just gonna count it. I had no idea what I was doing. It's not the best video quality, but that video is still very active. I get comments on it still quite frequently from people who do that tag because they're starting booktube, and so therefore I am getting to know a lot of new booktubers when they start. Best event you got to participate in this year? Going to Y'all Fest, definitely. Best moment of my booktube life? Meeting Mindy McGinnis at Y'all Fest, definitely. What was my most popular video on this channel this year? The coloring book review I did for The Secret Garden, which surprises me to no end. A video you wished had gotten a little more love. The Hunger Games collab that I did at Y'all Fest with Kayla, Rebecca, Morgan, and Caitlin. It didn't really get viewed and didn't get any comments really, and I know that that's because the audio quality, we had a technical difficulty. I loved making that video so much. I wish that it were more accessible and understandable for people to watch. Best bookish discovery of the year? Probably my love of audiobooks. I'm a little bit addicted to audiobooks now, and I wasn't really an audiobook reader, listener before, but this year I definitely have become one, and I need more audiobooks in my life. Question 10 is, did you complete any reading challenges or goals that you set for yourself at the beginning of this year? Yes, I completed almost all of my goals, and there is a separate video up on that. What is one book I did not get to this year but will be my #1 priority in 2016? Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I've heard nothing but amazing reviews from this book, and I really want to read it, and I've checked it out from the library 3 times, and I just keep having other books that are due first, and I don't know, but I really want to read it, and I need to make it happen. What book are you most anticipating for 2016? The new Mindy McGinnis book. It's coming out in October. A 2016 debut novel you are most anticipating? Ivory and Bone by Julie Ashbaugh. This is like a Paleolithic, prehistoric YA book. I want to read about that. A series ending or a sequel that you are most anticipating? I think as a series ending, I'm most anticipating The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. One thing you hope to accomplish in your booktube life of 2016? Happiness. That was very long, but thank you so much for watching. I had fun with those questions. It's really fun to think outside of just what were the best and worst books you read this year, but thinking along different terms and getting to acknowledge books that just don't make it to the best list, but still have really great qualities. If there were any of these questions that you have like the perfect answer for, let me know what it is down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!